Good afternoon. Per the ceasefire agreement, which was intended to end the war in Lebanon, Israeli forces were scheduled to withdraw by February 18th. However, Israeli occupation forces have decided to remain in 5 strategic points beyond the deadline, citing security reasons. How could this move align with UN Resolution 1701? And what would it mean for Lebanon's future and stability if Israeli forces refuse to fully withdraw from its territory? That would be our discussion for today's episode of In Depth, so stay tuned.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Just hours before the ceasefire deadline was set to expire, Israel announced that its troops would remain in southern Lebanon beyond the agreed timeline for a full withdrawal. This decision comes as part of a US brokered ceasefire deal that halted 14 months of fighting between Israel and Hezbollah. According to the Washington Post, the Israeli military claimed it would remain in what it described as 5 strategic points in southern Lebanon while withdrawing the rest of its forces. The ceasefire agreement reached in late November required Israel to fully withdraw its troops from southern Lebanon by January 26th. However, after an extension was announced, the new deadline was set for February 18th. In response, Lebanon's President Joseph Aoun called on international mediators to pressure Israel to comply with a complete withdrawal, emphasizing the importance of adhering to the terms of the ceasefire agreement.
Deadline for Israeli occupation forces to fully withdraw from southern Lebanon under a ceasefire deal with Hezbollah expired on Tuesday, just hours after Israel announced plans to maintain a presence in 5 strategic locations. While Israeli forces began withdrawing from some border villages on Monday, they signaled their intention to remain in key areas, prompting Lebanese leaders to condemn their presence as an occupation. Lebanon's president, prime minister, and parliament speaker jointly declared that any Israeli presence on Lebanese territory constitutes an occupation and vowed to seek UN Security Council intervention to enforce a full withdrawal. They emphasized that Lebanon's armed forces are prepared to assume border duties and reserve the right to use all means necessary to ensure Israel's exit. The ceasefire, which followed months of cross-border hostilities and heavy destruction in Hezbollah strongholds, required Israel to fully withdraw within 60 days while Hezbollah was to retreat north of the Litani River and dismantle military infrastructure in the south. However, Israel's decision to maintain troops in key areas has high intentions. Reconstruction costs are estimated at over $10 billion, with more than 100,000 people still displaced. Despite the ceasefire, at least 60 people have reportedly been killed in Lebanon since the truce began. As Israel refuses to fully withdraw, Lebanon's path to stability remains uncertain. Can the nation forge a lasting peace, or will unresolved disputes and simmering tensions trigger yet another cycle of conflict?
Moreover, Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz has threatened Hezbollah that the Israeli military will act with strength and without compromise against any violation, as highlighted by the Jerusalem Post. Katz added that the Israeli forces had constructed military posts on the Israeli side of the border with Lebanon. He further noted that the military is determined to ensure full security for all northern communities against any possible threats. Additionally, a spokesperson for the Lebanese presidency said that his country would consider any Israeli presence on its territory as and occupation. Delving more into the recent developments in Lebanon after the ceasefire, joining us now from Beirut, Mr. Marcel Belukshi, the military expert, and also Abdullah Nema, the political analyst. Good afternoon to you and welcome to Qnews. Let me here start with Mr. Belukshi. With Israel retaining control of 5 strategic points in southern Lebanon after the ceasefire, how does this impact Lebanon's ability to secure its southern border and enforce sovereignty?
Good afternoon to you. This proposal is the establishment of the state following the election of the president and the prime minister. The presence of the Israeli is constitute an occupation after the ceasefire agreement. Yet Israel militarily had to make this measurement to leverage its success in Lebanon and destroy several infrastructures of Hezbollah and protecting basically the settlement in the north. Following in the military airstrike, and despite all of that, still extending the north of Israel by the resistance. For these main 2 reasons, Israel cannot fully withdraw from Lebanon, particularly that it is still inverted in the Syrian Golan and has objectives throughout the Middle East and the Iranian file, along with Saudi with normalization.
Right, Mr. Nema, with Israel's refusal to fully withdraw from Lebanon, how far does this constitute a violation of the UN Resolution 1701 and the international law?
Good afternoon to you and your viewers. Certainly, we all know that Israel is always violating the international resolutions. And concerning the resolution 1701 isn't implemented fully. That's for Israel to fully withdraw from the Lebanese authority. For Israel insisted to stay in the 5 points on the northern border in order to protect the northern area affiliated to Israel. I think it is an evidence of failure of the Israeli army that wasn't capable to terminate or eliminate Hezbollah in Lebanon. And I think that the 5 point or the 5 strategic point didn't give a deadline to go to exit it, as they are building permanent military bases for long term, despite the US the guarantee for implementing the resolutions along with the ceasefire for the Lebanon. And I think to stay present, as they say, if you do not, or to create a pretext and forgive the air open for her and to be exposed into this house and do whatever they like, as they say, particularly non-withdrawal of the 5 strategic points is making more obstacles in the era of Josephine. The president has always talking about consulting with the international community to practice pressure as we resort to it and to put the issue of resistance aside. He had a statement of the 3 presidents from the presidential palace discussing the non-withdrawal of Israel as present in the 5 strategic points to resort and present this issue before the United Nations.
Definitely, that puts many hinders for the stability of Lebanon. But you did not tell me yet how does this really contrast or violate the UN's Resolution 1701 and the international law. We'll get back to you again, Mr. Baluqshi. Let me here ask you. You spoke about Israel's existence in Syria and its other interests in the Middle East. Can you further illustrate what did you mean by that? And now the Lebanese armed forces, how will it be able to poise control over borders, over its borders duties with challenges facing their existence and with Israeli troops' refusal to fully withdraw?
There is no doubt, as said by your guest, the America, along with the five-member community, has a main purpose for regional purposes, as I mentioned. The committee did not constitute a timeline for the deployment of the UNIFIL and the Lebanese army in the southern. That led to Israel protecting of the necessity in the south until to implement the 1701 resolution, along with destructing the infrastructure of Hezbollah. Up till now, the Lebanese military never deployed in the north of the Litani River. So Israel is taking this as a pretext for protecting it in the north. It is naturally for America to send the air bridge of the arms along with the meeting of Trump and Netanyahu to lay out a roadmap of the Middle East. And we are expecting a very important event for the Middle East following such a significant event by the shipment of arms. Despite all these changes, the Lebanese matter will be suspended until the matter will cleared out in order to secure the withdrawal of Israel from Lebanon. Before these scenes, as well as executing the nuclear file, I do not expect a full withdrawal from the southern of Lebanon before that date.
But you did not yet tell me what did you mean exactly by the existence of the Israeli forces in Syria and its other interests in the Middle East. But we'll get back to you about this. Mr. Nama, as the ceasefire officially expired, what role can the United Nations, the United States and France, particularly the United Nations Security Council, play in pressuring Israel to comply with the ceasefire terms?
I think the whole matter is suspended, waiting for the upcoming Arab summit. I think it is a Prince Mohammed bin Salman in order to have a new Middle East secure those peace. And I think this summit is a summit of red lines for the Middle East, particularly the issue of reconstruction along with the Egyptian plan following Trump's proposals, along with the Egyptian proposal. I think we are very linked to the Middle East. And for the Juland, back to the 5 strategic points for the Israel, I think they may withdraw until the issuance of resolutions through this summit that lead to the peace for the whole region. I think there is something is going to be prepared. I think it is not going to be having wars, and the evidence President Saoun's, along with President Salam's positions, that they are going to resort to the United Nations for the full withdrawal of Israel, which is an evidence that the issue of fighting on the southern of Lebanon is going to be left behind. And I think that the United States issuing statements every day to continue the assistance of the Lebanese army as the only guarantee for the Lebanese. And I do not think that the U.S. do not wish to get the Lebanese army to be involved in war. And I think that we are already out of the Iranian axis into the under guardianship of the Arab League, and I think the matters will go smoothly later on. That would require some time, and I think the President of Israel, just for a small period of time to protect its borders, waiting for the summit along with the talks with Putin and Trump. And I think the region that has in several papers and files, but upon to my knowledge that President al-Sisi's wishes for a new Middle East that is enjoying peace, and I think that the upcoming Arab Summit will be the title of the Red Line to issue resolutions, and that will please everyone.
Mr. Belokshi, how does Israel's continued presence in key areas undermine the ceasefire agreement and Lebanon's military strategy moving forward?
Absolutely, do have a big issue and a pretext for Hezbollah for the disarming the infrastructure because of the presence of the Israeli troops in Lebanon. But in the upcoming period, as mentioned by your kind guest, and I think that Hezbollah is being hit at large scale in mobilization and in the infrastructure, so the response will be limited. As for the Lebanese army, will keep controlling the matters as much as possible, sticking to the international mobilization to implement the resolution 1701 without using the arms. And the Lebanese army is going to retaliate, but for the resistance, its retaliation will be limited due to their injury. So the international community will be mobilized to support Lebanon, but Lebanon should take a unilateral initiative to withdraw Hezbollah troops to behind the line and to execute the deployment of the Lebanese army to give to gain the international trust to move forward and to pressure upon Israel to withdraw from Lebanon. There is no other step than this, a way of the incursion of Israel in Lebanon.
Right. Mr. Nama, with Lebanon referring to Israel's presence as an occupation, how can the new Lebanese government work to ensure a long-lasting peace and stability to its own nation? Do you want me to repeat the question?
Very harmonized government already, and it's for the first time for about 35 years that as they say they are a technocrat. Before this government, a daunting effort in order to secure the stability in Lebanon following the war, particularly after the US president stated that this is a project in the Congress for regarding the arms of Hezbollah that should be on the hands of the Lebanese army. Certainly, this matter isn't going to achieve without a clear international support. And I think there is an international support for Lebanon that never gained since 1948. I think internationally and regionally there is a support. But as mentioned by the colleague, there is some sort of a delay by Israel regarding the deployment of the Lebanese army in the south. Particularly, Israel is still protesting that the Lebanese army isn't capable yet to control on the southern of the Litani and disarm all or taking out arms from Hezbollah fully. They think that they will stay in the area monitoring the situation in Lebanon and to start any strikes under the pretext of protecting its own borders. But I think there is no way for the government to do the reforms. Particularly, we are receiving delegations from all the Arab countries stating that they can support Lebanese financially as from Qatar, Saudis, and the EU and the French people. When we do not wish to use the article, the 7th article, as stated by President Trump regarding the arms by sending UN troops under the 7th article to run the matters in Lebanon. The campus in Lebanon, into Lebanon, it is only for the stability of Lebanon, and I think as long as the international communities wish for stability in Lebanon, but this would require time. And yesterday, Israel has already withdrawn from the last villages in the southern border of Lebanon, but we still need some time, and as long as we're still gaining in the international momentum, I think that we are heading for stability.
Okay. Mr. Balukshi here, given the destruction in southern Lebanon, how can the Lebanese government manage reconstruction efforts and maintain security inside Lebanon, and particularly, definitely in this area, the southern? Hello? 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 Right, until I guess there's something wrong with technical problems here. We'll speaking to you, Mr. Nama, until we get back to Mr. Balukshi here. If I may ask you, Mr. Nama, what are the long-term political implications for Lebanon if Israel continues to maintain a military presence in strategic areas?
The Lebanese army is already been deployed into the southern until the 5 point. But the Lebanese army isn't going to prevent Israel if the strikes under the pretext that there is a presence of Hezbollah. And we all know that Israel had long way of protest, but the full deployment in the throughout the river of Lithuania, I do not think that Israel is going to do any strike unless if they are targeting to assassinate an officer of Hezbollah. And as they requested yesterday, that requested to assassinate a member of Hezbollah inside. As you all know, that throughout the hours, Israel is still doing the surveillance throughout the air by the drones. But I think even Hezbollah today, that we've already seen, along with the deployment of the Lebanese army throughout the area, we haven't seen any clashes between Hezbollah and, as we all know, that the resistance of Hezbollah, basically they are Lebanese, and they are from the villages on the southern. Either if they refuse to the issue of the disarmament, they'll have to go back to their own villages. But I think in the upcoming period,
clear, Mr. Abdullah, clear what you're saying here. We're speaking here about duties that should be made by the national army and definitely the resistance. Anyway, that was from Beirut, Mr. Abdullah Nama, political analyst, and Marcel Baluqshi, military expert. Thank you both for sharing your insights here, and I guess that brings us to the end of today's episode of In Depth. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews.